very much. I like to always start off by asking all of my guests who they are. And I do that because I think only one person can, there's nobody really can introduce you better than you can introduce yourself. So let's start off. And you like to go by Shy, reminds me of Chicago.
Yes.
So I'm going to be calling her Shy. So tell us, who's Shy?
Who is Shy? Well, Shy is I. I am I'm a victorious, happy and excited about life. I've gone through some things, but I don't look like what I've gone through.
Amen.
Amen. And so I'm just on a mission to encourage, inspire, and ignite the fire that is inside of other people through my life and my testimony.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you noticed that we started off the show today with Bag Lady by Erykah Badu.
Yes.
We started that off because I firmly believe that women in particular, we're innate bag carriers. Mm-hmm. We can carry some bags. Yeah. Sometimes we carry them too long, too often, and oftentimes we don't see the bags that we're carrying, or we're not aware of what's in our bags. Right. And I'm so glad to say that in spite of what you went through, and everybody's going to hear in just a little bit, in spite of what you've gone through, that at some point you decided to stop and check your bags.
Yeah.
Because one thing's for sure, if we don't stop and check our bags, what's going to happen? The garbage is, the things inside are just going to grow. Mm-hmm. It's just going to fester. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And then it's going to be epic when we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you have decided to check your bags. I also believe that forgiveness is huge, and that plays a huge role in what you're going to share today. People say carrying around unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping somebody else, the other person, will die. Yeah. So if there's anybody out there listening, you got to check the unforgiveness bag. So let's dive right into it.
Okay.
Your story is centered around being molested and abandoned. And when I thought about that, ever since I've heard your story, I thought to myself, God, how does somebody deal with molestation and abandonment? That's huge. Mm-hmm. That's huge. So let's talk about it. Take me back and take the listening audience back to when it happened. How did it happen? And when? Who? Everything that you can about it. Sure. That you choose to share, and thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for definitely having me here. I'm so excited and honored to be, a guest on Real Talk with you, Miss Carla J, and in the presence of Miss Jerry Beasley.
Hey.
Thank you so much, KCOH 92.9 for having me. So let's go back to, being born to my mother, who was 13 years old. She was actually the oldest of 8. And so I always say I was like the caboose of that whole thing. And she always told me that my biological father had raped her. So I always had the understanding that I wasn't basically conceived out of love. Mm-hmm. And so I was just kind of like something she had to do. Mm-hmm. We've always had a very strained relationship. But that relationship became more strained at the hands of I call him my ex-stepfather now.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, that's deep. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Your ex-stepfather.
My ex-stepfather.
Was that a part of your healing process that you had to add the ex?
I did last night.
Wow.
For the first time. That's my ex-stepfather. I don't have to own him as a stepfather anymore.
That's deep.
That's my ex-stepfather. Right?
Yeah.
So my ex-stepfather took possession of me, I guess I would say, when I was about 11 months old, came into my life. And he was a man that was very strong-willed, very, manipulative and, dark. But when you're raised like that, you don't realize that's what's happening.
Right.
He was a church man. Church man, and what would happen is that in the nighttime, he would come into my room. About
what age? What age do you think, if you can remember?
Yeah, so for me, it's been ever since I can remember, right? It's been ever since I could remember. I mean, I have memories like 5 years old, and probably earlier than that. But it became such a lifestyle You know what I mean? It was just like a continuation,
Right.
you know, of
Right.
years and years and years.
Right.
So it would be something real subtle, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah, something subtle like come into the room, lay next to you, and as soon as I move, you act like he was praying and things of that nature, you know, come in with only his robe on, you know what I'm saying, nothing underneath, and you know, and it just became really like I said, a lifestyle.
Right, but there's somewhere in there you started to, probably from day one, that you can remember that it just felt uncomfortable. Something just didn't feel right. And when you started getting those type of feelings, if you did, what was your course of action? What did you do? Did you think to talk to your mom about it, or did he try to calm your uncomfortableness?
Yeah, of course.
With mind games.
Oh, of course. I actually equate it to being brainwashed, right?
Yeah.
He kept me very close to him, so I didn't step out and tell my mom, or you know what I'm saying, like, you know what I mean. This was his love language towards me, right? And so it became, like I said, a lifestyle.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like I said, when he would come into my room, I would feel very uncomfortable because he was touching me or something. I would move, and then he would go into a prayer stance. So it's very confusing to me. It's like, this is praying. Is he laying hands on me? It was very confusing growing up as a young girl, you know. And again, too, whenever I would, like, you know, express some things to my mother, of course, it was like, she's delusional. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. And how does that make you feel? Because I think when you probably brought it up to your mom, one would think that it was beginning to bother you, or it was beginning to concern you.
Yeah.
And do you remember her response, or?
Well, the thing is, me and my mother wasn't really close.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
closer to him than I was to her.
Yeah.
So if you're closer to your molester than you are to your own mother, then you're going to believe and trust in your molester more than you can know that you can believe in your own, you know, your mother.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I like also too. I'm telling you. I hope you don't mind me saying. Shai said on her way to the station this morning.
Yeah.
Just after going through the interview questions, certain emotions, buried emotions, were evoked, and I think that happens a lot, probably with all types of trauma. Which it took me back to a time many years ago when I was a little girl. I couldn't have been any more than about 4 or 5 years old, and I was visiting an uncle, and he would put us on his knee. He would straddle us on a knee. And actually, he was a cousin. You know how back then you called cousins uncle. He was like my mom's second cousin or something, first or second cousin. And after hearing your story, and I started reflecting, well, and thanking God, well, it never happened to me. But then again, I remember years when I was about 4 or 5, and sitting on my uncle's knee, and how he would straddle us and rock us with his knee, and then he'd start licking in our ear. And I noticed something wasn't quite right about that, and I told my mom, and thankfully she did something about it. So I just wanted to share that to say that sometimes, just like you said, the signs are subtle.
Yeah.
Their signs are really subtle, and that's why it's even more so, careful for parents to be watchful of their children.
Yeah. And not only that, it's from people that you're supposed to be protected by.
Right.
You know, who's to think that your own father, because at that point, he wasn't my stepfather, he was the only father that I knew.
Right.
So he's my father, but he's molested me on a nightly basis, and he's keeping me away from my mom so I wouldn't tell her and divulge these things to her, and then still making me feel like he was my only answer.
Okay. Wow. So when did it actually come to you that this isn't normal and this isn't acceptable?
So I was around about 11. I remember one time I was like, maybe like in junior high school. It's 2 times. One time, he told me that he wanted to teach me everything. And one of those things is he wanted to teach me how to have an orgasm.
At 11.
And I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
So I remember going to school, and I asked my coach, what was an orgasm?
Wow.
I mean, I didn't know what that was.
Right.
It sounded like a big word.
Right.
And so she didn't tell me. I don't remember her recalling telling me. I think she was more stunned that I asked her, right?
I imagine so, at 11-year-old.
Yeah, and so shortly after that, right in that time frame, one particular time I stayed the night at my dad's because him and my mother had separated.
Okay.
And I stayed the night there, and I woke up that night, and I recall he was sitting on the edge of the bed, and he asked me, he says, are you sore? And then I was like, no, should I be? And then he told me, he said, yeah, because I put it in you last night. And I remember being very shocked and overwhelmed, and I asked him to take me to my mother immediately. And he took me to my mom, and my mom ended up taking me to the emergency room right away.
Okay, and that was at 11.
Yeah, this is like, finally, I'm like, Mom, this is what's going on. This is what happened. He told me this is what happened. What are you going to do? Help me. You know what? I don't know what to do. I was so lost and undone and confused and scared and all that.
Right.
And the same. So now, Mom, I need you to do something, right? This can't be. This something has to happen. So he took me to the hospital, and I remember laying on the gurney. I'm not a gurney. I think you're on a gurney if you die. I don't know. But laying on the bed, and they did the whole exam and all that good stuff. And I couldn't remember if they said that I had some tearing or what was the outcome of it. But so I could never really remember if that actually happened. But on my way here today, I literally had a flashback that I had not accepted. I remember a feeling. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Definitely.
And so I never wanted to be one of those ones like I was raped by, I've never been raped, right? Been molested, but never been raped.
Right.
But I think, like I said, as I was coming up here thinking about this, it was, some things came up, and a memory came up that I can't even say that it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
No, definitely. So you go to the hospital today. Your mom takes you to the doctor and to the hospital, and they confirm that indeed something has occurred. What does your mother do next? What happens next?
Yeah, right. So, of course, she's shocked, and of course she's not talking to him for a while. But of course, one thing about molesters, they're very cunning, they're very charming, and they're very great liars. And so what he says, he said he told me that because he knew I would tell her, and that would draw us closer together.
Oh my God.
Who says that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it was another thing that was like, okay, so I guess the family believed him more than me or whatever, and so.
So you're saying after that, you leave the hospital, you and your dad, your stepdad, your mom, and you guys have a conversation, and
denial. He's not going to admit that.
Wow.
Evidence is all right here. Yeah, no, that never happened, but, I did that so y'all could become closer together.
Okay. So after all of that, and that day passes, then what is it like living in that home? I mean, does the molestation continues because, again, he's playing mind games with you? Is your mom, you think, more in tuned or maybe on alert, if you will, or was that just something she suppressed? What do you
I think she was just as brainwashed as I was.
Yeah.
The thing is, he was playing us both, and he was playing us both against each other. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I said, he would keep me so close. People would think that I was his girlfriend. I'm his daughter. You know what I'm saying? But that's how close he would drive cabs. He would make sure I was with him. But he was keeping me close to him to keep me silent. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and to keep the secret that was going on covered up.
Did he, after that, he was just continuing to try to convince you that this is something that was the norm or something? Did he ever, after that, say, listen, there are some things I just don't need you to talk to your mom about? I don't need you to talk to anybody about, because you see what happened. It got you to the hospital. There's a report. Did he seem to kind of backtrack and rethink things?
Yeah. There was one particular time, because he would come into my room at nighttime, and he told me, he said, I'm going to buy you this lock to put on your door to keep him out of coming from in my room.
Yeah.
So we put the lock on my door, and to keep him out of my room, his idea. And my mother felt like I had something to hide, and so the lock came off.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
now you had you have other siblings.
Yeah.
Do you believe he ever tried anything with them?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Wow. And how are they doing?
You know, we cope. You get, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like one of those things is, and my mom, she was very always strong, and my mom was always, she raised us to get over things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Don't
Because
wallow in it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that in a little bit because of abandonment. And then, you know, when you were telling me that, how she had you at, right before she turned 14,
Yeah,
she was
4 days.
13.
Yeah.
4 days before turning 14.
Yeah.
And under, you know, horrific circumstances.
Yeah.
You're saying that she was raped by
Yeah.
your father.
Yeah.
So I can only, I was telling you earlier that wounded people wound others.
Yeah.
And I just can't even imagine what you were going through. When did it stop? When did it stop, and why and how?
It stopped. I believe it stopped because our family structure disintegrated.
Okay. And one quick thing before it disintegrated, and you said it was happening to your other siblings. Did you find that out? You didn't find that out while you guys were living. It
No.
was only
Yeah.
afterwards. Okay. So then you said the family disintegrates.
Yeah, the family
And-
disintegrated. By this time, my mom, she pretty much, you know, addicted to crack, cocaine. He was selling crack cocaine, had other women, and it was just a really big, ugly mess.
Yeah.
And so my mom, she basically temporarily lost her mind, so she left us.
Mm.
You know, I'm the oldest of 4, so she left us there with him one day. One day, I think it was her birthday, she just left.
She left you with the molester.
Never came back.
Never came back.
She left.
Did that change anything with him? Did he become angry, or did that intensify the molesting, or did he become more brazen about it, or
You know,
what happened?
and I'm not really sure. You know, I'm not really sure. Because, like I said, now his focus is basically on, you know, illegal activity and things of that nature. And so it started to, I think it started to slide. And plus, now I'm a little more verbal.
Okay.
I've fought him before, you know.
And you fought why? Was it because of the molesting, or
Yeah.
was
Well,
it,
see, I didn't trust him with my other siblings, right?
Yeah.
And I loved them so much. I knew what I was going through. I would protect them with my own life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And what were the ages? They were.
My youngest sister, my
They had to- they
my
were
youngest
younger.
sister is 10 years younger than me, and then the other 2 are in the middle.
Wow.
And so I would do anything I could to protect them. And so there was one particular time I was grown, right? And I wanted my other sister to come live with me because I did not want her there. I just knew something was going on, Carla. I knew it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I confronted the situation.
You confronted him.
Yeah, of course.
And what did he say?
No, it was a fight.
Physical.
Yeah.
Not physical.
I mean, I was so hurt. I didn't care who you were. I would fight.
Yeah.
That and all.
We were talking about your mom abandoning you when I mentioned molestation and abandonment, but I was thinking more at that point of being abandoned by your mom. But did you ever feel abandoned by the legal system, by the law officials, you know, CPS, that nobody actually stepped in to intervene?
Well, this is what happened. Around about the 11, 12-year-old, when I was about that age, I went to summer camp.
Okay.
And I was in not summer, church camp, right? Church camp. And I just felt like I had to tell somebody. I was carrying, like you said, these bags, even at 12 and 13, these secrets. I had to tell somebody. And the Spirit of God just gave me that opening to be able to talk to a church counselor.
Stop right there. Were you wanting to tell because you wanted it to stop, or were you still kind of unsure, or?
No, it's like, yeah, you wanted to stop. You know, you have to I need protection. I need help. I don't know what to do.
So you're at the camp,
Yeah.
and you go.
Yeah, so, you know, and talk to a church counselor. And, you know, by law, they have to tell the authorities.
Definitely.
So the church counselor ended up telling our pastor. So I remember I had to go to church, and then it was in secret that they got me at church, and then the authorities were called in. Authorities was called in. I had to write a statement about what was going on, what had happened. And my mom and my dad, right shortly after that, no, they didn't know I had talked to the authorities. And shortly after that, we had to go to Ohio, and they renewed their vows. Mind you, this whole drive, they don't know that the authorities know what I've told them.
Oh my God.
So then now my parents are back together.
Oh my gosh, they're back
Right,
together.
they're
So
back
they got
together.
together.
Yeah, they got back together.
Two wounded people
Got back together after all this. Now they're back together, right?
in Ohio.
In Texas.
Okay,
They went up there
Texas.
with family, renewed their vows,
Oh,
all
okay,
that whole
and
thing.
then moved back.
And we drove back here.
Okay.
Right?
Mm.
And so I know what's going on.
Right.
They don't know what's going on.
Right.
Then there's a knock at the door. A knock at the door. My dad goes to the door. Are you so and so? Yes. You're under arrest for molestation or whatever the charges were.
Wow.
Nobody knew but me in that house what was going on. My mom's looking at me. I know she felt betrayed. I know she felt like I was trying to, tear up her happy home
Exactly.
now.
Exactly.
I was definitely the enemy.
Exactly.
I was definitely the enemy in that situation.
Exactly.
He went to jail for a little while, a couple of days or whatever, but somehow ended up getting out.
Are you serious? To
Yeah.
come back to live with y'all?
Came back home, right? And so one particular time, I remember my mom, he was back home shortly after this whole situation happened. And she comes into my room, and I remember she looked me in my face and was telling me that I was trying to ruin her life. And I remember, Carla, she slapped me so hard. I could do nothing but a reflex, and I pushed my mother. I pushed her with all my might. And you know how you had the jam boxes back in the day? You
Yeah,
had the little
definitely.
boom
I still
boxes,
have one.
right? She saw the boom because she was stunned. You don't touch your mother. This is like back. We don't
Oh, yeah.
do that.
No.
You just signed your death
No,
warrant,
exactly.
right?
Oh, definitely.
She gets the cord off, and she commits to beating me so much. He came in there, got her off me, threw her out of the room, put the bed to the door, and was like, to keep her out of there. And
Right.
then now I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. You know what I mean?
No, definitely.
And she's screaming, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. And then I was looking, we were living on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I thought jumping out the window was a lot more safer than being at the
Then
hands
what
of
you
her.
had to deal with there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then after that, did things go back to normal, or just what happened after that?
Normal as it could be, but
As normal as it could be. Normal.
it was
Yeah.
normal, right?
Yeah.
Was normal.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So their relationship was just always weird.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I mean, can you imagine?
No. I cannot
Their
imagine.
relationship was weird. So, like I said, then finally a couple years later, it was just she just lost it, and she left.
And she left.
She left.
And when you and I talk, and you shared with me that your mom had you 4 days shy of her 14th birthday, her 14th birthday. I can only imagine, and under the circumstances of being raped by your father, that it had to have wounded her. It had to have wounded her. It had to have scarred her. And I can only imagine her trying to make peace with that while having child after child after child. And you expressed that you were really angry with her. And I thought to myself, but was she even able to be a good mom under the circumstances?
Of course not.
Yeah.
And mind you, remember, you have to add on to the whole thing that she was the oldest of 8.
The oldest of 8?
She was the oldest of 8 and had me at 13. That's another layer of hurt and of trying to figure things out, and you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And all the things she had to deal with her own mom.
Definitely.
So no, my mother was extremely broken. She was extremely confused. She was extremely damaged.
And one would also think that because she was raped by your your father, that she would probably be even more in tune to caring for her daughters. I would think that.
You would think, but when you have a man that has mind control over you, especially at that young of an age, you do what he says.
You do whatever he says. What would you say to someone who's in your shoes, who's going through that? Either from a mother's perspective or from the person who's actually being molested. Let's go there first. What would you say to a young girl or boy, because it happens on both sides, that's dealing with something as tragic as that is? person didn't.
Yeah.
What would you say? I'm sorry for that.
No.
What would you say?
What I would say to someone who is and have been molested at a young age and going through that is, it's not your fault. You've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing wrong to attract that person. You've done nothing wrong to tempt that person. That person is a sick and undone person, right? Just like Miss Carla said, hurting people hurt people. But you need to find your voice and you need to tell somebody. There is protection out there, but you have to tell someone. Tell someone that you trust. Even tell the authorities. You have to.
Right.
You know,
Definitely.
you have to talk. You have to say it. You have to be verbal.
Keep talking.
About. Yeah. Keep talking to someone listens.
Okay, now, what would you say to someone who's an adult who's not dealing well with something like that?
Yeah.
Because I believe it's happened more than we will ever know.
Yeah.
And that there are a lot of people. That's why that's why I wanted you on the show. Some people might say, well, why would you have that on the show? Because it's real.
Yeah.
It's real talk. It's happened.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are more people that it's probably happened to that it hasn't happened to. What would you say to some adult, be it male or female, who's going through something or not dealing with it well, because you came to grips with it, if you will. You were able to internalize it, accept it for what it was, and to move on.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody?
Yeah, well, exactly what you said. Accept it. Let's just be real with yourself. Accept that you were violated. Accept that someone took advantage of you. Accept that you were hurt and you've been damaged. Accept it. Stand in that truth and know that and stop blaming yourself.
But they can't. They can't get past it. They just seem like they can't get past it, and it's slowly consuming them.
And you have to learn to forgive.
I'm glad
You
said
have to
that.
forgive. That is
I'm
like
so
the main.
glad you
Oh my
said
gosh,
that.
you have to.
Forgiveness.
No. It's the absolute key. No. Forgive
Why is it?
yourself
Why?
for not forgiving them.
Exactly.
For feeling even condemned for yourself, but you have to forgive that person.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, and we're going to elaborate on that a little bit more. But I think about this. I think about that. If you don't forgive someone who's hurt you, namely molested you, it's almost as if you're allowing them to molest you over and over.
Very
You're
good.
giving them authority
Very good.
over your emotions, over your life.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Until you forgive someone for doing something terrible to you, it's almost as if you're still giving them the power to keep doing something horrible to you.
Yeah, no, you have to. I mean, I can take myself, right?
Okay.
I literally had to forgive. First of all, God is my Lord and Savior, right? And when He's forgiven me for my sins, the Bible tells us that we have to forgive others, what I'm saying, that transgress against us. So you have to get to a point where you want to be free, right? And when someone abuses you or they take advantage of you, it is key and imperative. It is the only way that you're going to be able to go to the next level in your life, right?
Yeah.
I literally told my ex-stepdad to his face,
wow,
I forgive you.
Well, how soon after? How long after?
No, it wasn't soon.
Okay.
It wasn't soon. It was maybe like after I left it was probably like 10 or 11 years after I was out of his life.
And why did you do that? Because
it was true.
And you had to do it. You just...
That was my freedom.
Yeah.
That was my freedom. And you know what? When I was growing up, I used to have this man haunting me. Right?
Yeah.
It was a figurative man.
Right.
But it would haunt me. Even when my stepdad wasn't there, this man would haunt me. And once I started to forgive him, that man left.
Wow.
It's almost like a demon that was attached to me.
Exactly. So you really believe that, and I do too, that true healing will never begin until forgiveness
It's the key.
intercedes.
It's the absolute key. Even if you don't know how to forgive, ask God to teach you and help you to forgive. Forgive that person. Release that person. Because you have a life to live. You have gifts and talents that are not going to be unlocked until you forgive that person that hurt you the deepest and hurt you the most. Even if you have to write on that piece of paper every single person that's ever said anything wrong to you, that molested you, because many times it's not just one person.
Right.
It's not just one. That is definitely.
And that's so sad.
Yeah, You know, so each and every person's ever violated you or touched you, write them on that piece of paper. Take baby steps.
Right.
And like, I forgive that person. You don't even have to talk to that person. Me, I looked mine in his eyes and told him I forgive him. You know what I told him?
What?
I said, I forgive you, but I will tell the world what happened.
Wow. What was his reaction?
He he stood up and went to the restroom. I don't know if he went to throw up or what he went to go do.
To faint or whatever.
I don't know.
And then after that, you started telling your story.
Yeah.
Did you see him anymore? Did you communicate with him anymore?
He's not in my life.
He's not
He's
in your
not
life.
in my
He
life.
is X'd
He
out.
is X'd out.
X'd out of your life.
You know, I never said ex-stepfather till last night.
Wow.
Again, too, me being here is even more healing. You
That's
know,
awesome.
I just didn't even realize it.
Wow.
You know?
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. What would you say to somebody? What would you say about getting counseling? You know, African Americans, sometimes that's just not something I know in my generation. We just didn't hear counseling.
Yeah.
You're just in here counseling. You know, you suck it up, you get over it. Maybe you can go and talk to your pastor.
Yeah.
What do you say about somebody who's actually going through something like that or anything and getting counseling?
It's imperative. You deserve help. You deserve to be able to have a voice, right? You deserve to unmask those things.
Mhm.
You know, a counselor is someone who's a non-judgmental. You
Should
know?
be.
Should be. So it's not about, find someone that you can talk to.
Exactly.
You know, find
Exactly.
someone that you're comfortable with standing in your truth in.
Right.
You know, because just because you know it, don't mean you've accepted it.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So it's good to go out and get outside help. And I just want to encourage anybody who's going through that to be mindful of counselors.
Yes.
Because I think the fact that you're going to a counselor is because you're wounded.
Yeah.
And if it's not the right counselor, they can take advantage of your woundedness.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important to make sure that you do your research and that if something doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
you know, make a change.
Yeah.
What do you say that to if somebody's in a relationship? What would you say to a mother who, like your mom, who has a stepfather or a stepdad in the house? What would you, and suspect something's going on? What would you say to our dad? It could be both ways. What would you say to that parent?
Talk to your child. Have that open communication with your child. With me, I didn't have that open communication with my mother, so I didn't feel like I could talk to her.
Wow.
Talk to your children. Go to them. Go on walks with them. Find out what's going on in their head. Sit and talk to them. If you ever gone through something like that, explain to them, hey, you know what? Be transparent. I've been molested. You know, so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Talk to them. Let them know that you're relatable.
That's good.
You know
That's
what
good.
I mean? If you are only the disciplinarian,
Right.
right? And
Right.
they can't let down their walls and talk to
Right.
you're not serving that child.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned something. Did your mother ever express her feelings about being raped by your dad, or was that? How did you find that out, and how did she make resolve if she ever did with that, or did she share that with you?
The way I found out with that is my mother, she would have random breakdowns. We would just be in the house and she would just cry and rock and say these things, and you know what I'm saying? Because obviously
Yeah.
she was so filled up with
Right.
craziness.
Right.
So she would, leak some things out. And then my dad, my ex-stepdad, he told me that when I was a baby, she tried to flush me down the toilet.
Oh my God.
Right? So, again, even from infancy, coming into this world, it was not out of love.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I got a lot of backlash from her pain.
Right. I can imagine
Yeah.
that. So where are you now with your mother? I think when we last talked, you said that you guys have a semblance of a relationship.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, I will tell you, a few years ago, probably like 7-8 years ago, my mother, she started her, she was born again, and she started her walk with the Lord and started really just, starting doing things at the church and started getting stronger in her faith. And she, out of the blue, she called me. And mind you, we had such a tumultuous relationship that we could not literally be on the phone or even in each other's presence very long at all without screaming or fussing or arguing or she throwing me out the house or whatever it may be.
Right.
Some kind of situation. So she calls me and she says, Chilonda, yes, mother. I know that you don't believe that I love you, but I love you more than you'll ever know.
Wow.
She said, and I am sorry that I have not been there for you. But from this day forward, I will be the mother that you need me to be. I remember being quite speechless. I remember getting off the phone, and I remember jumping into the shower. And I remember just letting the water run down me and wash me. And I remember crying and weeping out to God, saying, I didn't see that coming. I said, God, I didn't see that coming. And if I was 35. 35. And I just felt like this weight of 35 years was lifted off of me. And I, in that shower, in that moment, I forgave her. I released her. And I was so excited about our future. I don't bring up the past. She don't bring up the past. And so to this day, we call each other. She prays for me. She speaks a word in my life. You know, we're a lot better.
Right.
If you will.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said something.
Yes.
You said that she apologized. And I think that some people will never get an apology. Some people will never, ever get that apology.
Yeah.
And they need to move on. Oh, let's go to the radio. We have, to the telephone, we have a caller.
Awesome.
Yes, Carla?
Good. Hi, how are you all?
We're doing fine. Thank you for calling in.
Very touching story. Very interesting to hear this lady, and glad to see her actually getting on, recovering, getting on with life. However you deal with this. I understand it. A lot of times, beyond just step parents, we get a lot of babysitting that's free that costs us a lot of money, a lot of costs our children a lot of suffering in the long run. Whether it's free or not, I have 2 children. They're kind of grown now, but because of this issue right here, I could never take a vacation and leave my children somewhere for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. I just couldn't do it because having experienced a lot of some of the things that she talked about, but I never wanted my children to have to deal with it. And I'd rather suffer and sacrifice and not have that free 2 weeks to friends or whatever house to say, you're under my roof and I know who you are. My children spent the night away twice. But please, a lot of our children have damage.
Exactly.
And they're damaged from these things that are buried inside of them. Sometimes they don't even realize it. But we see a lot of people who grew up and all of a sudden have a lot of problems, whether it's drugs or some of them, just irate, it's lost.
Exactly.
It's because of these things.
Give us your name, caller, if you will, and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from the Houston area.
You're calling from Houston area. I'm so glad. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in, continue to tune in, and you made a very valid point. It's really, really important as parents to be cognizant, to be mindful, to be researchful, to research who we are leaving our children in the hands of. That is so important because all it takes is one time. And let me tell you something, you just never know who to trust. I'll never forget many years ago, my son was playing Little League football, and I was a single parent, and he had taken my son. We were supposed to bring him home, and I waited, and this was the first time it ever happened, and he had decided to take him to a football game at the Astrodome at the time. Tell you how long ago it was, but let me tell you what I did. That was the end of that. I had to put a stop because I didn't know if that was, a lead in to something more serious. So thank you so much for calling. I appreciate that. You are absolutely correct. We have to be cognizant and very mindful of and dutiful to ensuring that our children are left with the right people. So thank you for calling, caller. I appreciate that. And
but also with that too, and again, yes, thank you, caller. It's the closest people next to you. It's the closest people. Like you said, uncle.
Not the boogeyman.
No,
We think it's the boogeyman,
actual parents.
And you're right. And let me tell you something. I'm glad you mentioned that really quickly. There used to be a time when I was a little girl that when you closed the doors, when you locked the doors, when you locked the windows, and you counted, it was 7 of us, and mom and your parents counted everybody in the bed. And if the predator didn't live in the house, you felt safe. But now, predators are entering via the internet. And that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. We're going to cover that at some other time.
Wow.
But we have to be cognizant that the molesters, like you said, they're not always strangers.
No,
it could be the person next door. It could be the person, you know, living inside. You have to be mindful who you let your children spend the night with. You know, that's just something my mom didn't play. And I didn't play with my son of spending the night over people's house. I know how some things went terribly wrong because parents let their children go and spend the night, whether they were adult or there were molesters and predators there. So we have to be really careful. But we just have to be vigilant and really careful. Where are you now, Shy? Where are you now?
Right now I'm at KCOH.
Where are you? You know, and I was gonna, and before that too, how did growing up with that, was promiscuity a problem for you?
What?
You know?
Really? You think? Yeah.
I mean, some people shut down, and some people.
Really? I was looking for love in all the wrong places. Are you kidding? Yeah. Because of that, I became addicted to marijuana.
Wow.
That was like my escape.
Wow.
That was my escape from my madness, my life. That was my escape. I was a track star. I had to give it all up because I ended up getting pregnant at the age of 17. I've been married, 3 times, divorced 3 times. I had an addiction to pornography because I was introduced to sex in such a perverted way.
Right.
I dealt with my sexuality weirdly, you know what I'm saying? And so, no, children of molestation deal with so much. It's not about, oh, your dad touched you, now get over it and move on with life. Your dad touched you and it messed up your whole course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
because if my own father can want to teach me how to have an orgasm, right, then where's my innocence?
Right.
Where is the sanctity of relationship?
Right.
Where's the sanctity of love? What does love even look like? So I've had to find my way and figure out what love looks like.
Exactly. I can imagine that. Do you find yourself, because you say you have 3 children yourself.
I do.
Do you find yourself being overly protective because of what happened to you?
I find myself making sure that I talk to them. I'm very open with them about my life. So I let them know there's nothing that you can't experience that I haven't seen and I can't help you through. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what your safe zone is. No one's supposed to see you. You know what I'm saying? No one's supposed to, you know what I mean?
I'm so glad you said that. It's imperative that we teach our children, you know, the safe zone.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times they don't know, and it's almost like you have to kind of like role play. If somebody does this, you know, not physically touch, but if somebody does this to you, this is how you need to respond. And don't let them psych you out. Don't let them play mind games with you. So it's really important that we teach our children that as well and know the warning signs. You're in the process of writing a book, Scraping the Rails. And I remember when Shai told me the name of this book, I thought it was metaphorically speaking, you know, scraping the rails, meaning that she was scraping the rails of her life and her past and clearing things. But you say that you literally scraped rails. Yeah. So
literally.
Just briefly about that.
When I moved here to where I'm at, Texas, from Tennessee a few years ago, I was in the restaurant industry for a long time. I used to be in the restaurant industry for 16 years. And I got laid off of my job, and I was in an apartment, and I was single parent by this point, and you know, 3 kids in my apartment, and laid off, don't have any money. And the apartment complex, you know, they want their rent. So the assistant manager, he asked me, he called me, he said, so Miss Burns at the time, he said, so what's the status on your rent? I said, well, the status quo. You know, I still don't have it, you know? And so he was like, well, because they like me. He's like, well, would you consider scraping the rails off the books $3 a day to pay off your rent?
Rails of the apartment complex.
The rails of the apartment complex,
wow,
like the
literally.
stair rails.
Yeah.
And then all I could say is yes.
Wow.
I said yes.
Wow.
So I would literally sign into work every day, up to the office, with my hat and my tennis shoes on in July and August of here in Houston heat, go get some sandpaper. They'll give me sandpaper. And I would literally go outside and I faithfully scrape those rails. Right?
Yeah.
And while I was scraping those rails to the best of my ability, I remember listening to my worship music. I remember praying, asking God, Lord, there has to be something out of scraping these rails. You know, when you're in it, you don't see the outcome, right? I just knew I've always done everything to the best of my ability. They never even checked those rails, but I would go out there faithfully and scrape them. Till one day, shortly after, manager asked me if I wanted to come in and do some filing out the sun. Yes, I will. Went in, did some filing, sent me back out. And then maybe a little later on, they asked me if I wanted to come and do a leasing job. I said, I've never done leasing. We'll teach you. Okay. And mind you, I'm out in the scraping the rails, having visions of working for this complex. I need some money. I don't even want the housekeeping job. Have you ever envied a housekeeper?
Oh my gosh.
I was envying the housekeeper. I was envying the person watering the plants. I just needed a door, a way in, right? So anyways, fast forward, I started to lease apartments. I did that for 6 months. I was a top leaser. I was a good leaser, Carla. After 6 months from that, I was promoted to assistant manager of the same apartment complex. A year later, I made a bilateral move. I made a bilateral move to another apartment complex, and then shortly after that, I was promoted to apartment manager. Right? So a year and a half from scraping the rails, now I am the apartment manager of a 556 unit apartment complex here in Houston. Right? I got a manager, up and become a manager of the year, manager of the year, property of the year.
And also, so that's going to be the title of your book. That's the title of your book.
Scraping the rails.
Scraping the rails. Looking forward to that. Want to have you back on the air. You are happily married. You want to do any shout outs?
Yes, I am definitely happily married to Mr. Chilonda Clebourn. He made me an honest woman finally. Thank you, God. We actually celebrated our 1 year anniversary last year.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm gonna need that clapping. The sound. Okay. So he's amazing. And you know what? He lets me stand in my truth. He's non-judgmental of me, and he just he takes good care of me and lets me come out and do stuff like this.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. You said you were transparent, and today I applaud you in your transparency.
Thank you.
I applaud you for sharing it with us. I applaud the individuals who called in. Those of you who are watching by way of Facebook Live on my feed or Shy's feed, I appreciate that. God bless you. Continue to tune in. I always want to bring really relevant topics your way. So that's really important. So thank you, Shy. I'd love to have you back as a guest.
Absolutely, anytime.
Because I think there are more things that we could cover that we didn't, and I think this is a really important topic. So thank you for being a guest. Thank you to those who have been listening. Again, if you would like for me to be a guest at your next program or host, please, you can reach me via Carla J Motivates on any of my social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything. I'd love to be a part of your program. Also, like I stated at the beginning of the show, if you would like to advertise or talk about your next upcoming wonderful event or your new company or your business, existing business, we'd love to provide a package here for you. Just give us a call at 832-771-6964. Again, that's 832-771-6964. Thank you so much for your attention and time. God bless you. And remember, like I always say, be someone's beautiful, bright light in darkness. God bless. Till next time.